the liberty-based, libertarian, free market, von Mises, Ron Paul movement of the last 30 years that was such a tiny voice 30-something years ago is now huge. It's got to feel good for former Congressman and, of course, medical doctor Ron Paul, fellow Texan, to see his son in the Senate leading the fight for sovereignty and anti-war and to and audit the Fed and to see the anti-globalist movement being so popular, not just here, but around the world. I tell you, the worm has turned. I'm not saying we're in some utopia. There's still huge fights ahead. And I want to talk about what he's most concerned about. But I've seen Ron Paul on TV, and I thought, man, that guy looks younger. And he's joining us via HD video, and I'm like, man, you look 10 years younger. What's going on? He said, well, look, it's great not flying back and forth to Congress. That's what's great. So it is wonderful, former Congressman Paul, to join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Can't we say that Trump is really trying to deliver on a lot of promises, pulling us out of TPP day one, signaling that we're going to try to cut our corporate tax so we can be competitive?
Well, I'm a non-interventionist. I don't like entangling alliances. I don't want to have anything to do with NATO, United Nations. I think that's, all a danger to us, and that's what I've been fighting for. So I watch carefully of the individuals who have been living under those conditions. The military people certainly have been mixed in with that a lot, too. They won't look at the difference between military spending and defense spending. They still talk about defense. Defense spending, defense spending. I don't want to cut a penny out of defense, but I do want to slash military spending because it's nothing more than getting us into mischief around the world and incentivizing these people to come and get us. And as long as we do that, we're going to have a problem. So I want a stronger defense by having a changed foreign policy and also to separate the two between military and also, defense. And I think Trump does say some things about, cracking down on some of the waste and fraud. But I also think it's very important to know what our policies are. Are we truly the policemen of the world? And, of course, I think that's a dangerous position.
Well, he did just put a federal hiring freeze in. He did just announce all these regulations that are designed so companies can't operate are gone. And I did love one big thing he did. When he announced we're pulling out of TPP, he didn't reserve it and say he's going to oversee it with Congress and renegotiate it. He said it's unconstitutional. They had no authority to negotiate it. The president didn't. It's just dead. I mean, right there, he handed power back to Congress, back to the states, back to the people. He didn't say, oh, I'm going to renegotiate it. That's a big sign. I mean, Ron Paul, isn't it exciting? I know you're not just a cheerleader for Trump. I'm just super excited because here he is saying Americanism, not globalism. It's we the people that have the power. We're going to give the power back to you. You are what is important. We have a bunch of elites up here that are arrogant, calling the media out for being fake. You've exposed that as well. I mean, they just do outrageous stuff. Major media said that I got arrested at the Trump rally and thrown out. No, they had communists attacking me. The police protected me. I mean, the MSM has only seemed to double down in their deception.
Well, I think you're right about the TPP. I'm delighted. I don't want to get anywhere close to that. We need to get rid of the WTO and the UN and all that others. If in a year from now, if we're in a lot less than 7 countries, then I'm going to say, great, move on. But right now, I'm watching carefully because I think it's really, really hard to use as an example turning around an aircraft carrier. It's very, very difficult.
Sure, but he did pass a big test when he de-escalated with Russia, says we shouldn't be massing troops on their border because that's totally illegitimate.
I praise Trump when I think he does right, especially with Russia. Why are these people wanting the neocons to stir up a fight with Russia?
There's a big call for Trump to move to repeal the law that Obama signed, federalizing media, putting the CIA over it, this Truth Department at the State Department. There's also all 50 state attorney generals have asked him to not let Homeland Security federalize elections. You're a constitutionalist. You're more of an expert than probably any of us on this. I mean, isn't it already super unconstitutional to have the federal government over the media, A? And then B, what about this whole thing where they're calling for Homeland Security? Well, they've done it to federalize elections.
Yeah, and that's why I fear, that we're militarizing the Department of Homeland Security. I think and you know darn well what I thought of Homeland Security after 9/11. I voted adamantly opposed to the Department of Homeland Security. Now it's bigger than ever. So, and the CIA, if you're a strict constitutionalist, you allow the gathering of intelligence, but you don't allow the cloak and dagger stuff, where the CIA works with the special forces and goes around the world. And believe me, that is going to accelerate, because we're going to go anywhere, every place that there's a suspect, not where we've proven anything, but he's suspected that he could commit terrorism, that we're going to go after him. I say, just get out of this.
Well, I can tell you,
I mean, this is how you create the hatred toward us, is by people have to understand what blowback really is. And I'm a strong believer in blowback. There is a reaction, and it incites people who are already borderline in their thinking.
You have been called basically a Russian agent. I have been called one. Trump has been called one. All these fake revelations have come out. None of them are true. It's totally made up. And that's how they passed that law to, quote, try to control U.S. media, is because, quote, the Russians are so powerful. They even claim now that Drain the Swamp and Crooked Hillary came from Putin with no evidence. What do you make of this? I mean, this is like McCarthy on PCP.
Yeah, that was the word I was thinking about as you were saying that. It's the McCarthyism. Yeah, they try to destroy people who come up with a messenger. Somebody called in when my name was on that list, and they were a little bit worried about it. And my staff said, no, that's good news. That's good news. We're on the right side, of them attacking us because they want to destroy us, because they're afraid of the truth. We're telling the truth, and they have to close you down by demagoguing and lying about us. So I think there are healthy things. Right now, I think the best thing, and Trump's done a good job on this, is debunking, so much of the media. There's so little trust in the government, and that's why Trump won, and rightfully so. I think 70–80% of the American people don't even believe what government tells us, but they don't believe the major medias anymore. So I don't think we have to lecture them and say, oh, don't believe what the major media is saying. They don't believe it anyway, but we still have a long way to convince people of what the alternative should be. And, of course, I try to be as precise as I can and as balanced as I can, because I know it's against the rules, if you identify as a Republican congressman, that if a Democrat president does something halfway decent, you compliment on it. I happen to think it's a great idea that we can talk to the Cubans. And if that is canceled, I think that's a step backwards to the dark ages. I was drafted during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the longer we sanctioned Cubans and we pestered them like that, the longer Castro stayed in power.
Your logic has been proven right, and President Trump's called you super smart, so I hope he'll confer with you and get some of your advice, on this. In the few minutes we've got left, I want to speak about the nature of the division in this country. I went out to the so-called female march against Trump on Saturday in D.C. We let them have their march and didn't attack them. They attacked anybody trying to go into the Trump inauguration. The media has been caught lying about the numbers. It's just incredible. And I see the division. I was screamed at over 300 times that I was an effing white male by mainly white women. The Democratic Party has been turned so racist and so mind-controlled. I'm really worried about civil insurrection in this country. There's a big article out today in New Yorker magazine about that the elites are actually leaving the U.S. So I've been positive so far, but I just hope that Trump can unify the country. We can come together. As he said, don't conquer the world, with military, but have America be a shining city on the hill, that our ideas are what, basically spreads across the world. So do you have concerns about Soros and others that admit they're trying to fund civil war in America?
I think policies that we have designed, incrementally over the last 100 years, have worked us into this position because it's a failed system. Just as Mises lectured many, many years before communism failed, he explained why socialism always fails and communism would fail, and we didn't have to have a fight and a war with them. So, but the same rules apply to Keynesianism, interventionism, Federal Reserve inflationism, militarism. It fails. All empires end, and we're the empire. And it's going to end. It's going to be for economic reasons. It's not because the Russians are coming, and it's not going to be because the Chinese are coming, and the Iranians aren't going to get us, and we're going to fail because we're working with a failed system, especially in this century. In the last 17 years, it's been a disaster, and Trump was able to recognize this and go to the people who have suffered the most. But this is a monetary problem. This is a spending problem. This is a foreign policy problem. And that is what's going to bring us down. It's going to be financial, and it's going to be associated with horrendous increases in spending and also inflation. And yet we still have a policy where they deliberately try to devalue
In
our
closing,
dollar.
How long do you think Trump has to try to reverse that, because we're so far down the road? I know he's making hundreds of calls a day to get jobs back. He does want to cut taxes.
Yeah.
He also wants to cut spending. I mean, what needs to be done to right the ship?
Well, I'll tell you what, he has a short amount of time, and I think he's sincerely trying. And when he talks about taxes and regulation, I think he's doing a great job. But the whole thing is, let's say there are some dire predictions that, you know, in next year, or say a year and 18 months, we have something arriving worse than 2008 and 2009. The downturn is much worse. And they'll say, it's all Trump's fault, it's all Trump's fault. No, it wasn't. 08 and 09 wasn't Obama's fault. It was the fault of the Federal Reserve. It was the fault of the Keynesian economic model, the spending too much, the deficit. So, unfortunately, there's nothing he can do. Trump can't do it. He can help, you know, by some of these policies, but you can't avoid the correction. The correction is locked in place because the deficits are there, the malinvestment. Everybody agrees.
That's right.
Interest rates have been too low, too long,
and that's why he's racing.
The only thing he can do is allow the recession to come and get it over with, liquidate the debt. Politically, nobody wants that, so you're going to see runaway inflation before you see this country wake up.
Dr. Ron Paul, thank you so much. We salute you. Ron Paul, LibertyReport.com. Thank you, sir.